Hello, college football fans. Welcome once again to Urban's Take. Urban Meyer, three-time national championship winning head football coach, analyst extraordinaire. Urban, welcome back to your show, my man.
Big week, Tim. Big week.
Dude, has this season flown by or what yet? I mean, you know what I mean? It's the week of the game. It just seems like we started doing this about 3 weeks ago. Has it felt like it's flown by?
It always does. I really love what I'm doing with Big Noon and obviously hanging out with you once a week. So yeah, it flies by, but it's almost like the world comes to a halt this week.
Yeah, it is crazy. And then all of a sudden it creeps. I think you're going to Ann Arbor. Like I always ask you, do you put armor on before you roll into Ann Arbor? But the game, the greatest rivalry in sports. You've coached in it. You grew up immersed in it, up in Northeast Ohio, Ashtabula, and parts east and west. I mean, what does this rivalry mean to you in a nutshell? I know you've been asked that a million times this week, but let's make it 1,000,001.
Yeah, even when I wasn't involved, growing up in Ohio, it meant everything. It's just like, you're brainwashed at such a young age, especially where I grew up, Northeast Ohio. I mean, it's a Buckeye haven. I mean, the world shuts down when this game reaches. And then, a guy named Schembechler was hired in '69, and this was after the Buckeyes won the national championship. I rewatched the documentary last night. Had some people over, and I think they were kind of looking at me like, "Wait, why are we watching this?" And I was like, "Why are we not watching this?"
Yeah.
I'm going to test you here in a minute, so
all right,
make you understand it. And all those great players, all those great stories, the snowball, it goes on and on and on. So it means the world. And as I said many times this week, this is not a big game. Just don't say that. This is not a big week. This is a way of life in the great state of Ohio. This is a way of life.
Yeah. I tell you what, I was privileged. The 1973 Ohio State team had a reunion on the homecoming weekend at Ohio State this year, and I was privileged. They invited me to come talk to them about the impression of that team on the football world in general. And you remember 1973, these two teams were undefeated and played to that 10-10 tie, and then the Big Ten voted to send Ohio State to the Rose Bowl. I think that's the first time Michigan should have gotten a hint. Some guys in the Big Ten didn't like them, but. Yeah, I mean, these guys, they were still, Archie Griffin right on down the line. They still looked like some of them could go out there and play the game. But there were games in the 70s that really captured your imagination, right? And that was one of them.
Oh yeah, absolutely one of them. And they beat us in '69, and then we came back and put it on them in '70. And
yeah,
and that's when the Wolverines and Buckeyes 10-10 tie, and they sent Ohio State. That sent Schembechler into a tizzy.
Yeah.
And then it became, and I think that epitomizes this rivalry. And this is why this is so different. And I tell people this all the time is, hatred is a big part of a rivalry, but not disrespect.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that, Woody Hayes was that way, both Schembechler and you talk about hatred, they're good friends. But that game, really not just for that 24 hours or for that 60 minutes of football, but the dislike is so strong, but the respect has always been there.
Yeah.
And I learned that in the '70s. Those guys were out of their mind. I remember Woody Hayes, like having police and kicking people. They thought they were, spying on their practices. And it was crazy watching that documentary. But then the one thing that never in my mind should ever be crossed, and that's the line of respect.
Yeah. Yeah. I was wondering what they were spying on, what they were, if they were spying, boy, that's funny how present day. But if they were spying, Woody only ran like 5 plays in that game. You know what I mean? They practiced this elaborate passing game all week and then didn't start throwing the ball till it was 10-10, So it was crazy. I wanted to ask you this, though, Urban. You just brought the word up, respect. You're paying attention. You guys are going to be there on Saturday, big noon kickoff. Jim Harbaugh was asked what kind of respect he had for Ryan Day in the Ohio State program and vice versa. And both of them danced around that question. I'm talking about, the respect factor for each other. And we're at an interesting juncture in this series, aren't we?
We are. I don't blame either one of them. You know, that this is not the time to talk about that. This is you can talk about that in March, April, you know, in summer meetings or something like this. But I think both of them handled it appropriately. I mean, with everything going on right now, there is a little bit of, I would say there's probably even a respect issue here now. But that's time
Yeah.
for another story. For
Yeah.
someone to ask me on a Wednesday or Tuesday of that rivalry week, I would probably look at that person and say, you know, I wouldn't say it. I'd say, why, you know, what, who cares? What are you talking about? You know, we got practice here in a minute, and you have a media obligation that you have to go to these things. But anything other than focus on your team, getting prepared for this game, I think they both handle it right. You know, move on. I mean, this is not about that right now.
Yeah. Plus, they're not playing. The players are playing.
That's right.
I want to take your take on this. What is your take on the Michigan situation right now? How it might affect them? I mean, can you imagine being told in 2015 you're not going to be allowed to be at the game, even though you were the head coach at Ohio State? That was one of the great games in this. Obviously, 2014 helped propel you guys into the first college football playoff, which you guys won at Ohio State. But can you imagine being told you're not allowed to be on the field in 2014? How would you have handled that?
Well, that wouldn't have happened. You know, that's no chance.
No negotiable.
Yeah, that you know, I with calculation and you know intention, I stayed away from this thing. You know, we talked about it, and I gave, you know, I said, if this is true, first of all, I didn't believe it to be true.
Yeah.
You know, I thought this was just another media narrative out there that's not true. Especially when I started hearing, you know, the guy's wearing Central Michigan hat and he's has a beard. The next day he shows up in Ann Arbor, clean shaven, and then he has bought 30 tickets all over, you know, and I'm thinking there's no way that this is true.
Yeah.
Then then they were going to fight it, and I kept thinking, you know, they're going to fight it. And then when he said, you know, they're not going to fight it anymore, and then that coach got fired, I think there's a lot there now, Tim. I you know, for that coach, for Coach Harbaugh not to coach in this game, I mean, I almost start sweating thinking about that. What do you mean you're not coaching in the game? He's a former player, you know, great player there.
Yeah.
You know, they Buckeyes 2 years in a row, all this on the line, and you're not coaching in this game, and you're not fighting it. So there must be, you know, there's stuff there that, you know, maybe this isn't in there. Once again, I don't until you find out everything, but it got real serious when they said we're not going to fight this.
Yeah. Urban, have the stakes, like you said, you were born in 64, you started paying attention to it in the late 60s, early 70s, but have the stakes ever been higher in the game than this year? I mean, they've been as high, you know, you can make that argument. I mean, like we said about the 73 game, the winner went to the Rose Bowl and the loser went nowhere. You know what I mean? Even that was back before. Matter of fact, that game helped hasten the idea that Big Ten teams could go to something other than the Rose Bowl, you know, at the end of a year. But have the stakes ever been higher, man? You've been following this entire football season from your analyst seat. It's crazy what's on the line Saturday.
Yeah, 2016, we were both playing for a playoff spot. In 18, they were playing for a playoff spot. We should have been playing for a playoff spot. It didn't happen, but this is two undefeated teams, you know, two very good teams that could actually win the national title if they manage the playoffs correctly, because I don't see that one dominant team out there. So to answer your question, and then with everything involved, I don't know if I've ever seen one like this.
Yeah. Well, what is it like? I mean, before we move on, what is it like to actually, like you said, the preparation didn't begin Monday for Ohio State. You know, okay, we're playing Michigan this week, you know, but what is it like that day of that morning of the game when you wake up and know so much is riding on it? You might have heard me. I asked Ryan Day on Tuesday of this week, does it give you at least some kind of sense of freedom, knowing that all that matters is the W, meaning don't hold anything back? You understand what I'm saying? I mean, is it? I know you don't feel free, but there is something about you've got to win this game or else kind of feeling that kind of lets you go out and throw all your punches, doesn't it? I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, all due respect, Tim, I don't think coaches think that way. I never did. You know, first of all, the only sleep I got was when I took a sleeping pill on a week like this, and I get up and you know, you're just what goes through a coach's mind is, did you check everything off
Yeah.
the list?
Yeah.
Did you cover this? And then, you know, I was such a nut about sports performance. You know, are our guys fresh? You know, because we practiced really hard. And this week on purpose, we really didn't. You know, people think, you know, and I made the comment on Big Noon that,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know if I did it every week, but the majority of times for this week, I'd take the shoulder pads off. You know, and I would make a comment that you know, this is going to be this is the most violent game you'll ever play in your career, in college or pro. This is it. And so I want your neck, I want your shoulders, I want your body feeling so good on Saturday at noon when the foot hits the ball. The next thing you're going to hit is going to be wearing maize and blue. And the players like that. They like the fact, you know, that's the biggest thing is coaches. I don't know about, like what you said, is they let it all go. You know, you're always trying to win.
Yeah.
It's just that the mind of a coach is always, did we do this? Did we do this? And up until the foot hits the ball, it's all prep. Once the foot hits the ball, then it's all adjustments. So you're working. I mean, we are working right now at the Ohio State. You know, the trainers, and I was nuts. Mickey Marotti was nuts about the health and safety, right? Or the freshness of your team, because you are going to have to be as fresh as you've ever been. All due respect to everyone else, both teams have played. Not even close. You know, Penn State, I don't think, as you watch them, they're not near what these two teams are.
No.
The Wolverines have played, I think, the worst schedule in college football, one of them.
Yeah.
The Buckeyes, the last 3 weeks, they played Wisconsin. Wisconsin's not the same Wisconsin right now.
No.
Minnesota, I watch that Minnesota team, and you're like, you know, that Minnesota is usually pretty good. They're not.
Yeah.
And then the Michigan State team, they used to be really good. I mean, Tim, I watched that game. Michigan State is, I've never seen a team that bad from Lansing. So Ohio State and the Wolverines have played very light schedules relative to what's going to happen Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, you know, Ohio State's pretty healthy for this time of the year. It's pretty interesting. They're getting Tommy Eichenberg back, it looks like. I mean, it's about as healthy as it's been in several years for the game. Real quick, do you want to make a pick in this game, or do you want to leave it laying there and let the game decide itself?
No, I got an employer that doesn't let me make any picks until Saturday at Big Noon. So I'll make it at about 11:55 on Saturday.
When you gonna start putting headgear on when you make that pick? I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you. Hey, okay, Urban Meyer, you don't get to go to the Ohio State Michigan game on Saturday. What you get to do is you get to pick any other rivalry out there and you can pick one you haven't been to, one you haven't seen. I mean, Oregon State this week, the Civil War is huge for Oregon, especially. Washington State, the Apple Cup is huge for Washington. Alabama, Auburn, the Iron Bowl. I mean, Alabama's already in the SEC championship game, but it's got to win out, to get to the college football playoff. You can pick one of those three games to go to, maybe one you haven't seen before. Where would you go?
Well, it used to be Florida State was number one on that list.
Yeah.
Back in the day. And that was, I coached in 6 of those things. And that's a while. I've always been intrigued by that Iron Bowl. I just, Mark Ingram is one of my great friends now. And I just think, that's probably the number 2 rivalry in college sports behind the game. But, Oregon State, those are 2 good teams. I think Oregon's one of the best 4 teams in the country. I don't think there's any doubt. I think the Iron Bowl would be one I'd like to go see.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing, though? Some of these rivalries are going away next year because of this conference situation, expansion. And Oregon State, the Civil War is not going to happen. Bedlam, Oklahoma State's not going to happen. I mean, I know college football moves on, but something's going to be lost in losing those kind of games, isn't it, Urban?
Yeah, don't get me started on that, because imagine a group of people sitting in a room in Texas and saying, "Hey, I got an idea.
Yeah,
let's let Texas and Texas A&M not play anymore." And you'd be like, imagine someone says, "Well, it's not the same as Ohio State Wolverines." Sure, it is. Down there, it is.
Sure, it is, buddy.
I mean, someone said, "You know what? I think and it's like when I hear people say, "Let's move the game, Ohio State versus the Wolverines. Let's move it to like September." What are you, out of your mind?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, stop. And obviously, if I would never be asked to be in the room, but if I was, I'd be like, no.
Yeah.
The game stays.
It's got to be where it is. If you play 2 weeks in a row because of this revamping of the Big Ten, so be it, right? Heck, maybe 3 times in a row before we're all over with this 12-team playoff. Hey, well, heck, let's just move right into it, man. People want to go eat their turkey, and I don't want it to be me. Your checkmate moment, my checkmate moment that I would offer to you, and you may have a different one, but Michael Penix Jr. in Washington, they hung on in the rain. They took they scored 22 points and didn't score in the second half. But then third and 3, Michael Penix Jr. fades back to pass, throws that ball to Dunsey with just over a minute left, and they're able to run out the clock and beat Oregon State 22-20. Huge game for Washington because it stayed undefeated. And as much as everybody likes Oregon right now, Washington could still beat Oregon again and be in the college football playoff. I do believe that. I think maybe you do too. The winner of that game goes, and maybe Florida State stays home. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. Obviously, Washington moved ahead of Florida State this week in the college football playoff. But, man, there's something about putting the ball in your best player's hand and letting him take care of business when you need it the most in an undefeated season. What's your take? Was that your checkmate moment of last week?
It was. And, Michael Penix Jr., we watched him at Indiana lead. I'll never forget when he led IU to a win over Penn State. To think him and DeBoer, the coach at Washington, were there in Bloomington, and then somehow they got away. But yeah. Michael, I don't know him. I love that guy. I love him as a competitor. I love him as a player. I love his smile. I just love everything about that player. So that was a checkmate moment. The sad thing is, and I'm not a West Coast person. Pac-12 is done.
Yeah.
I mean, who'd ever thought, say, hey, also I got a good idea. Let's blow up the Pac-12. Blow up the Pac-12.
Yeah. Somebody's turning over in a grave. I'm not sure who it is, but somebody is. Hey, one last thing. Do you have anything on a game day, the game, when you coached in the game where you went 7-0 against Michigan? That's pretty good. That you did the morning was there any kind of tradition involved? You can tell it now because you're no longer coaching. Was there something, or did you just go, oh my goodness, it's game day?
No, I used to, I wanted a similar message always, and I would always say, don't let that team stand in the way, and
yeah,
there's so much to ride on this, and at the end of the day, don't let that team stand in the way of what you worked so hard for. Because every year when you play these guys, the game after this, it's usually a Big Ten championship game, almost always is. Don't let that team stand in the way of everything you work for. And that was kind of in my own mind, and I would share that with our players on the day of the game. That was my message constantly. Don't let that team stand in the way. You control this. They have no control over this. You do.
Yeah. Hey, one other quickie bonus. Jim Tressel did this, and John Cooper tried to do this, but Jim Tressel did this, and you took it to another level. The thing that stands out different between now and 73 is both of these teams play offense in the game, right? I mean, you had your team throw haymakers in the game. Because what? That's just the way you played football.
Yeah, you talk about throwing haymakers, and this is, that's the whole purpose of not wearing pads this week. And once again, all due respect to everybody that goes on and plays after this game, I just know because I witness it and watch it on the field.
Yeah.
And I've talked to our players afterwards. This will be the most physical game you've ever played, and the most physical team's going to win. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a cold day in Ann Arbor, maybe a chance of flurries and all that. The team that's the most physical team will always win this game. You have to believe that, and you have to get that in the mind of every player, whether it's on kickoff return, punt. Whoever hits the hardest in this game will win. Yeah. And that's our job as a coach, is to make sure that their body's ready to swing as hard as you can.
Can't wait to see this heavyweight match. Urban Meyer, Urban's Take. I'll see you again next week, my man, and have a good Thanksgiving.
Same to you, Tim.